So I want you to count these triangles, right? And so Gestalt psychology would suggest to us that we close forms and we close shapes when we don't have all the information. And so the same can be said about our own psychology. And so the nature of our blind spots or our unconscious bias or implicit bias, and we'll talk about the difference between those in just a second. But in our unconscious bias is that we come from a context, a particular context at a particular time, and so we have a particular worldview or way of seeing the world, and it is not our fault, but it is our
Are
responsibility.
you biased?
So
To be human is to be biased.
here's a short
Even
video
when we
that really
think we're
talks about
making
this idea of
decisions based on our
affinity
values,
bias.
there are
There are a
thinking
number
traps and mental
number
shortcuts we
of
use as
types
crutches
of
that
bias,
prevent us from making the
and
best
we'll only
decision.
address a couple
Affinity
of
bias
those,
is the
right? So
unconscious
one
tendency
is
to get along with
affinity
others who
bias
we
and
perceive to
in-group,
be like us.
out-group bias.
It is
And
easy
so
to
this video
socialize and
will,
spend time with others who are not
so
different.
at your leisure, if
It
you can watch
positively
this, that
impacts
would be
insight.
helpful, as
Managers are
well
more
as
likely
this
to
affinity
assign key
bias
projects.
video as well. And so when we talk about this idea of being a leader with unconscious bias and cognitive control, we have to recognize again that these things are not our fault, but they are our responsibility, right? So how many of us have driven or ridden in a car? I would imagine many of us have, right? The vehicle you were in, did that vehicle have blind spots? And typically, where were those blind spots? So some people would say they were, at the mirrors, at the sidebars, sometimes in the back, right? And some folks would say if you're driving a Hummer, the whole thing is a blind spot, right? And so when we think about those blind spots, are they our fault? Were we on the design team for those vehicles? And I would submit to you that most of us were not on those design teams. And so it is not our fault that our cars have blind spots, but it is our responsibility. And so when I borrow a friend's car, when they loan me their car, or I go to a rental car place, and that car is different than the one that I drive on a day-to-day basis, does that car have exactly the same blind spots in exactly the same places? And I would say it doesn't. I would say that they're different, right? However, I have said to my friend, or I've said to the rental car company, that I will take responsibility for those blind spots. And so how do I find these blind spots? Well, there are two ways that you can find out about blind spots. There are two ways you can find out about unconscious bias or implicit bias. One is to make a mistake or crash. Right? That's an expensive way to find out about those blind spots or about that unconscious bias, by saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, or interjecting a humorous comment at a time or situation that's not appropriate, right? So those are pretty intense ways to find out. However, there's a simpler and easier way that may not cost us as much mental energy, and that is to actually look for those biases, look for those blind spots before I even really need to look for them. And so challenging myself, doing lots of assessments, talking with friends, going outside of my comfort zone to engage with other people, will allow me to expand my comfort zone, to expand my worldview, and challenge those biases that I have as I work to build cognitive control over those biases. And this concludes this particular session. I look forward to seeing you in our next session. And this is Andre Koen. Let's keep talking, and I'll see you soon.